You would do well to remember the ancient saying, Hal yisirk min kapr misr et wafa. He who robs the graves of Egypt dies.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Hooked on Hammer, the podcast where we delve into the wonderful world of Hammer horror. I'm Adam, your host, and with me as always is Mike. How are we doing today, Mike?
Yeah, not bad. Getting over a bit of a cold, as you can probably tell by the croakiness of my voice. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm not too bad. You know, same old, same old.
Do you reckon we're going to nail this episode?
I hope so. I think we're starting to get into the swing of things at this point.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know, a couple of people have listened to it and gone away having enjoyed it. I know there was a bit of a pause after it had gone away then, wasn't it?
A couple of people have listened to the episode and gone away.
I mean, please don't do that. I meant to say, gone away and listened to our podcast and then went away and watched the film.
Yeah.
Hopefully a couple of people that have never seen some of these films before have, you know, listened and been like, oh, okay, let's have a look. That's the hope anyway.
Hopes and dreams.
Not talking about ourselves for any longer, Mike. Bore the listeners with all that. We are here to talk about the 1959 film The Mummy.
The Mummy, the living dead, bringing terror and death across 4,000 years. He was a high priest of the great god Karnak, until one night he attempted the ultimate in blasphemy. He was condemned to guard forever the princess he had loved and protect her from intruders.
Directed by Terence Fisher, written by Jimmy Sangster again, and released in 1959.
Yep. And the amazing thing is we've gone up 1 year for each episode, starting off in 1957 because Frankenstein, moving on to Dracula, 1958, on to 1959 with The Mummy. And the amazing thing about The Mummy is that it's the first official remake allowed by Universal Studios.
I was going to say the opening credits, you see the Universal logo for the first time as well.
And they do make mention of Richard Scher, who wrote the 1932 Universal film with Boris Karloff.
The Mummy. Is it dead or alive? Human or inhuman? You'll know. You'll see. You'll feel the awful, creeping, crawling terror that stands your hair on end and brings a scream to your lips.
1932 or the 1959 version of The Mummy?
Ooh, that's a tough one, actually. They're both pretty good. Oh, that is a tough one. It was a lot easier with Frankenstein and Dracula, I gotta be honest. I don't know, I'd probably say they're on par with each other, these ones. There was a few bits in this I wasn't overly fussed on. You could tell that Universal had input.
Yeah.
Like some of the flashback scenes. We'll get into it properly later, but I wasn't a fan of quite a lot of the theatrical things in this. It didn't feel right in a Hammer film.
No.
So to speak. What about you?
I'd probably have to go with this one, the 1959 version over 32.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of either.
I mean, I'm just going to put it out there now. The 1999 one just trumps both of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've never been a big fan of The Mummy as like a character or creature or
Wait.
icon.
You like the 99 one though?
But the 1999
right,
version.
okay, I was going to say I will get up and leave right now, like podcast over. We'll leave friendship over, like completely and utterly gone.
He was fantastic, and I loved the kind of like transitioning of that character. There was purpose outside of I'm a slave or I want to find my lost princess.
Yeah, which was big in both this one and the 32 one.
They do have her in the 99 because he's going after Evie in that one, trying to bring back an Noon. But it's all about him regaining his power.
Yeah, like one thought I did find with this film, there wasn't enough Christopher Lee as the Mummy, fucking shit up, basically.
Yeah.
That's like the kind of the big thing you want from a monster movie.
You want to
sounds cliche as fuck, but you know,
doing monster things.
Yeah, except the Monster Mash. That's just a weird film, like.
Yeah, a film like this and a film like the original Universal films as well. We've got our cast of characters that we are supposed to see as heroes.
Yeah.
And we have our main antagonist. We have our villain, our monster, in this case, our mummy.
Again, not the real villain, though.
No, he's more of a slave to Karnak and...
Scary Red Hat Man.
Yeah. I I take it you forgot his name.
Yeah, I was literally watching the film, and it got to a point, and I was taking notes for the podcast, because, we do a little bit of prep.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. And it got to a point, and I just completely drew a blank. So, in my notes, he is referred to as Scary Red Hat Man. What is his actual name? Let's abolish Scary Red Hat Man immediately.
So, his surname is Bay, so
Bay?
we just refer to him as Bay.
Bay.
B-E-Y.
Bay, not Bay. What? Bay?
Bay.
Bay.
Yeah, not B.
B.
Bay.
Bay.
My name is Jeff.
But yeah, it kind of changed her up a bit from Karloff's version of The Mummy, because he was more in control of his faculties. He was the powerhouse.
Yeah.
But Christopher Lee in this is almost demoted from his previous roles into just a pawn.
Right, Mike, I'm going to make an executive decision here.
That's probably best.
Before we get sidetracked anymore, before we go into another Twins of Evil remake with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger, here to talk about The Mummy. So, without further ado, cue the footsteps.
I am Dracula, and I welcome you to my house.
In the name of God, you dare not!
This is more than a superstition, I know. The danger is very real.
It's a criminal lunatic. He tried to kill you.
We've discovered the source of life itself, and we've used it to restore a creature that was dead.
It begins. Come on.
So, same as our previous two episodes, before we get into the meat of it, we need to understand where the bones came from.
You'll be happy to know both the MPAA and the BBFC were pleased with the film. Instead of asking them to cut anything or rearrange things, they offered suggestions at the script writing stage.
That is incredible, considering like what they've been like before.
And as we go through the film and talk about specific scenes, I'm actually going to read from the 5th of February 1959 letter given to Hammer that breaks down all of those recommendations and suggestions of what the BBFC don't want to see in
That's pretty
accordance
cool.
with Sansa's script.
So this is you got the actual
It's
letter.
the actual one signed by the director of the board for
I was
BBFC.
about to say Terence Fisher. I was like, why is he putting a certificate on his own film?
The film was in pre-production, and Sangster was already writing the script with permission from Universal to make an actual remake of one of their classics, which, of course, is The Mummy, as we know.
Yeah.
However, instead of following the same themes, the same narrative as the original 1932, it actually follows three of the sequels. So you have The Mummy's Hand, Tomb, and Ghost. So I think it's 40, 42, and 44 for those films rather than the 1932 one.
Okay.
A lot of the characters that appear in those sequels in this film, such as Bay being one of them.
Yeah.
Fez wearing worshipper of an ancient god, using the mummy as a tool.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned, with the BBFC offering suggestions of what they...
Did they do that a lot, though?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah. So it got to a point with the Board of Classification, of course it was censorship at this point, where so many films were coming in, they've already been filmed, it's costing a lot of money for them to have it cut out.
Yeah.
So a lot of the studios made an agreement with the BBFC to send the unedited scripts to the organisation, and then they would read through it, making notes about every description, and offering suggestions of maybe not going as far as
putting a head in acid.
Yeah, pretty much. So then the production companies weren't losing money because they've used X amount of film, or they've set up a really expensive shot.
Well, reshoots cost money, don't they, at the end of the day? So.
Yeah. But the letter from the 5th of February 1959 actually starts with, "We've now read the script of The Mummy. In general, this seems to be fair enough material for the X category. which is the top category for films at the time. Now we have 18, and with
when did X get abolished then? Because it was associated with adult films.
It still is.
It still is.
Yeah, it's still associated with adult films, so it hasn't officially gone away. But when we changed over to the universal PG 12, 15, 18 method of certification, X kind of got pushed into the
just being for the adult,
pornography.
yeah.
To answer your first question of when the X certificate stopped being that top rating for films, it was actually 1982 when the
That's quite late, mine, to be fair.
Well, they had, I think it was 59 up until 79 to 80, where they had anyone under the age of 16 couldn't watch certain films, as well as having the X certification. And then X was then replaced by 18, 16 of course dropped to 15 then.
Yeah.
So whenever we look at certification, they will have the no persons under specific age. You mentioned earlier about, is this a normal practice for them to send the scripts off?
Yeah.
It's referred to in this document certain vulgarity that's expected from Hammer at this point. I mean, you have 3 horror films now.
Yeah.
And now they're already assuming that this is going to be the case. They describe it as a sangster cocktail.
Ooh, that's a nice phrase, that is.
And then it follows with all of their recommendations of what they need to change.
Come on then, let's get into it. What do they say?
Oh, I'll talk about it sporadically.
Oh, just going to sprinkle it in every here and there. Yeah. There you go, folks. You've got to listen to the entire episode now.
Like beautiful angel dust. We've already mentioned we have the recurring players coming back. We have a very similar cast that we've seen before. We have Peter Cushing, we have Christopher Lee within this as our lead roles.
Yeah.
We've got Terence Fisher, we've got Jimmy Sangster. Instead of having James Bernard come back for this one, they had somebody called Franz Riesenstein, and it's one of the first collaborations that they do together with Hammer. Aside from the usual normalities that follow with pre-production, it was a fairly speedy process.
Shot in Bray again.
Yep, shot in Bray. They had a bit more funding to it. So
you can tell, to be honest. Yeah. There's a lot of points in this film.
Like sound studios and things like that as well, which, again, were located
more elaborate
Bray.
More elaborate sets constructed as well. Before we get into the film, we need to talk about these opening credits. Yeah, not the best start, especially considering the previous 2 films that we talked about in our last 2 episodes. Yeah, it didn't look right. The font and everything was very in keeping with Hammer. You were very aware you were watching a Hammer film. Yeah. But overlaying it on, like, Egyptian hieroglyphics, it just didn't work for me. It just really didn't work.
I completely agree. I didn't get on with those opening credits. I wanted to see... They didn't make the film for me. I wasn't even born then. I wanted...
You're very good for your age, Mike. Very good.
I wanted to see the text overlaid on, the architecture or a location like we saw in
like
the
we had
2.
in Cursive and Dracula.
This overlay onto the different hieroglyphics and, the Egyptian imagery just reminds me of watching Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and the book opening with Walt Disney, and we've got this fairy tale writing on there. Yeah.
Once upon a time in Egypt.
There was a princess.
It would have been even cooler if they did the crawling through space opening.
At least that's a location.
From the opening titles there, we go into a dig site. Flashes up 1895, so we get the year immediately.
Yeah.
We get introduced to our characters then. Steve, played by... Is it Felix Alma? Am I saying that correctly? Alma? Great input here, Mike.
Oh, Stephen.
Sorry. Have I got to call him Steve? I can't abbreviate it to Steve, can I?
I wasn't sure who you're talking about, but it's the lead archaeologist, isn't it?
No shit.
Yeah, Felix Aylmer.
Starts with him discussing with Joseph about this dig, and then he weirdly just goes straight into your son's fucked up his leg and needs to get it set properly.
Yeah.
Bit of an odd opening.
Yeah. It's kind of...
Yeah.
I'm trying to be optimistic about discussing this film because openly admit I'm not a fan of the Mummy films in general.
Yeah.
Save the 90s version that's more action packed and fun.
Yeah, we wouldn't be continuing this discussion if it wasn't.
No.
If you didn't like that film.
But yeah, like you say, on an archaeological dig, they're looking for the last resting place of Princess Ananka.
Did that come from one of the films it's inspired by, should we say, like remade from?
So in the original 1932, Mummy was a Nuxamanon, which is the same with the 99 version.
Yeah.
But in both Hand and Ghost, it's Ananka in there.
Yeah.
It's just changing up a bit, and they're using a different mummy instead of Imhotep in 1932.
Yeah.
I think Kharis also appears in those sequels as well.
Okay.
But yeah, as you said, we're introduced to Peter Cushing's character.
It's a good, quick way, I suppose, of establishing your characters and who's who to who, basically.
Yeah, we're able to establish that you have Aylmer as Stephen, the father, who is funding the dig. We have his brother as well, played by Raymond Huntley, Joe. And then we have the son, Peter Cushing, playing John, who is eventually going to be our main character as we're going through.
They find, the diggers find an item at the sort of entrance.
Did you notice how hench that digger was?
I mean, to be fair, like, how long have they been doing this dig?
Yeah, but...
So he's going to be big, like, that's kind of what happens when people dig all the time.
He's also kind of like... I don't know, they make him look more like it's slavery that they've got them there.
But it is 1895.
Slavery is still a thing with the British Empire in Egypt.
The Slavery Abolition Act 1833 abolished slavery in parts of the British Empire.
All the way through that opening, I was just looking out for him to see where he'd turn up. And when he hands him it's like a little relic, isn't it?
Yeah.
He hands him the relic. And when Stephen walks away, he's then walking in the background past the tent from a completely different location. And that wasn't me being like, oh, continuity error. It was me going, oh, it's the hench guy. Did you turn over there? There was also another guy in there who had a bit of a belly and pepperoni nipples. So I was looking out for him too. He didn't really move much though.
He got a bit of a belly, that's why. It's more difficult for us guys, Mike.
Let's look at this.
What is it?
We found it 10 foot from the entrance.
Looks like a badge of some sort.
It is, and I think it proves that we're on the right track at last.
I hope so, for John's sake.
So he takes the item to Cushing, then his son, who confirms it's a badge of the Canuck. There you go. Got there in the end, folks. The Karnak guards. So they're like obviously excited, and I think Cushing turns around and says, "Oh, we can probably break through in 4 to 5 days. We can get in there."
Yeah.
At that point, good old Uncle Joe steps in again, kicking off like, "You need to go and get your legs set." And his dad could push him, but even he turns around. He's like, "You know how much has gone into this."
Yeah.
So Peter Cushing's like, "Yeah, I can wait."
Yeah.
And something he'll massively regret later in the film.
Yeah, because he's destined to walk with that limp.
Not his best decision.
No.
I mean, to be fair, that's an actor. He's putting on the limp. We'll get into why Christopher Lee actually had a limp after this film later on in the podcast. They didn't blind him in this one, folks, like they did in the previous two. But
they did a lot worse.
Yeah. Let's take a moment of silence for Christopher Lee.
In the arms of an angel.
So time has passed.
And they realise they're pretty much there, and they start moving those stones out of the way. They've got the little human chain going with it, passing it between them. And the hench guy is at the front of the queue.
Well, obviously he's the hench guy. You're obviously going to put your strongest guy forward first, aren't you?
Yeah.
They're not going to put me or you in the front, are they? Where are you? Left back in the changing rooms.
Where am I? I'm up on the bleachers in the smoke.
Where am I? Crying in the corner. Wondering what I've done to deserve these kind of working conditions.
Yeah.
As you said, they got the chain going with the strongest guy at the front. And introducing Scary Red Hat Man.
Mr. Banning.
Oh yeah, he comes in.
Doesn't he?
Yeah.
He is not a happy bunny.
No, but It's more of a warning he wants to help them.
Yeah, Bay's very... He tries to do the right thing at first.
Yeah.
And he's like...
I must ask you to stop these operations.
I don't understand.
You must not continue digging here.
No, I love this bit because you can tell good old Steve, he's come from many, because he turns around and he's like, we've got all the necessary permits.
Yeah.
And then he's like,
Got all the necessary permits, haven't we, Joseph?
I'm not interested in permits.
You're not from the Egyptian government?
No, I'm not.
well, okay, I don't need to speak to you anymore, and just carries on.
Yeah, it's just like ignoring what he's saying about it. And it's not so much, is it legally right to do it? Is it morally right to do it? Or ethically right to do it?
Steve don't care.
Steve-o.
Steve doesn't care. To be fair, he said earlier, didn't he, that they've been digging or looking for this for the last 20 years.
Yeah, he kind of picked the most inopportune moment to come up and warn them not to do it when it's there.
Where were you 19 years ago, mate?
Yeah, when I've sunk all my money into this.
Could have avoided the entire resurrection of the mummy and everything.
Yeah.
Just after year one, it's like, guys, it's really not safe to do this.
I was quite happy with this scene. They've got George Pastel as Bay, but they've also got people of other ethnicities playing the worksite men that are there, in comparison to the 1932 where there's a lot of questionable paint on people.
Yeah.
I think there's only one person in the film that's different ethnicity, and that is somebody who's credited as the Nubian. But at least with this one, Hammer's
branching out a little bit.
Bit more progressive than their counterparts in 1930s to do that. So I thought it was really good. And this moment with Bay, warning them not to do it, it genuinely felt like he was
trying
to keep the conversation going, and there was no malice or malicious intent there. It was more consideration and concern for his culture, his heritage and history.
And he finishes on this like really cool thing. He says it in, I suppose, Egyptian, doesn't he?
Yeah, I assume so, yeah.
Yeah, and then he says it in English.
Hal yisirk min kapr misr et wafa. He who robs the graves of Egypt dies.
Basically, like, fuck around and find out.
Yeah. And him giving them this warning, as you said, is 1895.
Yeah.
1895, this is around 27 years before Tutankhamun's tomb was excavated.
Oh, okay. What year was that?
1922. Not 2022.
2020. That was only 2 years ago, Mike.
No, we were giving things back in 2022.
Oh, God.
We were stealing them in 1922.
So Steve doesn't care.
No.
He's basically like, mind your own business.
Yeah.
So they go into the tomb then.
And it's almost like a little lobby area, like a little auditorium before going into the actual sealed off area.
Yeah, it looks more like a tomb than the actual tomb.
Yeah. I mean, the actual tomb looks like a 5-star hotel.
But to be fair, I think we spoke about this before we started recording. If it was actually sealed and everything was like pristine, wouldn't it just stay like that naturally? To an extent. I mean, a bit. Those are some choice noises then.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it whilst I was watching it, because
it does look very clean in there.
Of course, they're in this lobby, there's bones and stuff, there's sand everywhere, it looks dirty, and even the rope that they've got around the two handles of the door have frayed.
Yeah.
And when they do cut it, it's quite easy in comparison to when they do it later
This
on.
is one thing that wound me up a little bit. Like, they go over and he's like, oh, it's the royal seal. This royal vault, this tomb, has been sealed by a fucking rope. And they just put a royal seal. Like, I'm pretty sure they knew how to make a lock back then. They had ways of like locking their things without. All I mean is they didn't need to use a bit of rope. That was a bit of a misjudgment, I think.
Is it? Yeah. It's the royal seal of Ananka.
They cut the rope and they open it.
Yeah.
It is beautiful.
The green light and the tinge is fantastic. There's a lot of use of green in this film.
Yes. It was the first thing I thought about when we talk about the colours popping, and it's usually the blood reds that are popping in the other films.
The lab scenes in Colour of Frankenstein and Kiss of Frankenstein.
It's weird. Frankenstein gets colour. Bleeding the hard way.
I'd watch that, The Colour of Frankenstein.
Yeah. What colour is in Curse of Frankenstein?
It was all like pinks and like whites and
yeah.
purples and shit in the lab, if you
And the
remember.
solution as well is like a greeny colour. Yeah, that's true. But with the tomb's green colour, you know, it's like a jade or emerald type thing.
Yeah,
it's very overpowering, isn't it?
There's something you're looking at, you're like, it's enticing, but at the same time there's something not quite right here.
Yeah, like how is it lit?
Yeah.
As I was rewatching it, I was thinking of we shouldn't really be comparing it to the 99 version at all, but the 99 version where they move the mirrors.
Yeah, that was a very cool trick.
And, you know, that is actually something they used to get lights around there.
To be fair, I think a few more mummies have been dug up by the time the 90s mummy came out.
Yeah. But it's well lit as well, which is quite peculiar.
Yeah.
Considering the only light source really is coming in from the hole that they climbed in through.
Yeah.
And if it's supposed to be like airtight sealed, it's not going to be airtight, but you know, if it's sealed away, then there's not going to be any other light source coming through.
So yeah, it does give off that unnatural, weird type vibe.
Almost, I did think of The Wizard of Oz. I think mainly because of the colouring.
It reminded me quite a lot of some of the segments in Creepshow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because obviously they got the weird lighting and the smash edits and stuff like that in Creepshow. The quick pans up, like the reveal of the monster in Curse of Frankenstein, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, I love the attention to detail that they gave to it.
Marvelous. Absolutely undisturbed.
Props to the art department for the entire design on there. I'm not actually aware of who had the art direction on it or the set design credit, but you can tell it's a team of people this time around rather than somebody saying place this here, here, here and make it look like a lab.
Well, you've got these elaborate sets, but then you've got the smaller, confined ones, I think, like the house we see later in the film that Peter Cushing's character lives in is very in keeping with
that kind
that
of like,
hammer,
the Gothic style to it. Maybe not to the extent of Dracula's home or the Baron's home in Curse of Frankenstein, but very much when Van Helsing goes to visit Michael Gough's character and that home, it's very much in keeping with that.
Oh, definitely.
And of course, we're seeing this beautiful image of the tomb because we have Asher back again, the cinematographer who worked on Curse of Frankenstein and Dracula as well.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, Steve then examines the coffin and confirms it's
Ananka.
That's the one. Confirms it's her. He's like, oh my god, and he just gets completely and utterly consumed with examining this coffin. Uncle Joe again steps in, he's like, right, well, I'll go and tell John then, shall I?
Yeah.
So he leaves, leaving Steve by himself in there.
Yeah.
Curiosity obviously gets the better of him, but we don't find out what happened until later on in the film. For now, we follow Uncle Joe back out. When Uncle Joe does come out, and he tells the diggers, Bay looks pissed.
Is it the tomb, Effendi?
Yes, the tomb of Ananka.
Halakuba Alamira Ananka!
Like, he's standing off to the side so he's not really seen because he's already said his bit and how they shouldn't be doing anything there.
Yeah.
But he stands off to the side, gets confirmation, he's like, oh, you bastard.
Yeah, yeah.
He's not happy.
You've done the thing I requested you not to do.
Yeah.
You know, and seen it as a massive slight and disrespect.
He goes and speaks to Peter Cushing's character and confirms what they found. The joyous occasion, the 20-year search is over, gets cut short by a horrendous scream coming from inside the tomb.
After all these years. Oh, confound this leg. You better get back, he'll need help.
Let him have his moment of triumph.
The BBFC make mention of this section.
Okay.
With just one request. More of a demand.
More of a demand.
Yeah.
Not to show something?
No.
Oh, hang on. Maybe not a specific blood-curdling scream.
Yeah.
Or their other request is don't use the bloody Wilhelm scream.
No, they would have requested it. You're right on that second guess.
Boom.
So, in reference to pages 15 and later on in the film 29.
What happened on 29?
Bannon screams again.
Oh, I think I know when.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later, though.
Yeah. So pages 15 and 29, and I quote, Bannon's mad screams should be tolerable.
Tolerable?
Yeah.
Define a tolerable scream.
No.
That's quite a demand.
It's a very subjective thing.
Yeah, like, something that could be, like, triggering or horrendous for you, for example, might not affect me. Exactly. I'd just be like, that's quite funny, that is.
As I was watching, I was thinking, okay, yeah, this is, a bit of a crazed scream. Valerie Gaunt, her performance with the screams was fantastic in Curse and in Dracula.
I mean,
this wasn't even in comparison to that. This was a little bit more toned down.
They were way worse.
In 1932. Yeah, I didn't think this was too much, but obviously they made the request.
Yeah.
Maybe they toned it down a bit.
Would have been interesting if they did one version and then the BBC were like, no, we can't tolerate a scream like that.
Yeah,
that is disgusting. Don't cut it out.
But then that would have cost them a lot of money. If you think they put all the money into that set, they're filming on that set,
and
they may have demolished it.
This is light years before digital as well.
Yeah.
So the film was obviously that had to be taken into account when budgeting for a film, for example.
But then his screams off screen.
Yeah, but obviously you see it later in the film what happened to him.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So it kind of needs to be a tolerable scream.
Yeah.
From when you see it and both when you don't see it. Because obviously a scream off screen, that could be interpreted as so much worse than it actually is.
Exactly. It's the power of imagination.
Yeah, as we brought in previous episodes, I think I mentioned Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
As a prime example of that. So, yeah, it's obviously down to audience interpretation.
Exactly. Going from that guidance of a reasonably minded audience. So what would be tolerable for them?
Steve, what is it? What's happened?
Uncle Joe runs in to save the day. Obviously too late.
Yeah. Finds
him in some trance-like state, mumbling and muttering, like me at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday night. Yeah, can't make any sense of it, and nobody knows what's happened.
And then they just continue. They're like, yeah, he's gone now.
To be fair, they do the honourable thing and ship him off back home. At least. They do the nice thing.
But that's when we first see John limping.
Yeah. You dick, you should have listened to Uncle Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Instead of listening to your now raving mad dad.
I mean, cutting some slack. He's attacked by a dead mummy. That's enough to drive anyone mad. But he's not actually stark raving. To an extent. It's a good, quick passage of time.
Took me by surprise.
Yeah, because they're just both stood there and then he turns around and he's like, yeah, that's the last of it.
Was that the last?
Yes, that was all of it.
Hang on, wait, what's happening?
Yeah. Did it skip?
I mean, I loved it in a sense that it was quick, sweet, short, sharp to the point. Something which they should have done in the flashback scenes later.
Yeah, definitely.
Later on in the film, but we'll get into that later. One thing I did love, I think, was a cheap and very effective way of doing it, is you look at most of the actors when they're in the scenes that are set in Egypt. And throughout the entire thing, all of them look clammy and sweaty.
Yes.
But then you go into the bit set in England later in the film, and they're all fine again.
Yeah, I did notice that. Yeah. Everybody, it looks like they're caked in sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a very quick, easy, effective way of doing it.
Yeah.
Without, having to do it for real, I suppose.
Yeah. They could, have just frequently sprayed the actors. I know they used the spray in the tomb to kind of give it that misty look to it, and they probably had those sprays on hand to just douse all of the cast.
That, or let's be honest, we've both been on film sets and worked with lights before.
Oh, yeah, you
could just leave one of them directly on an actor for 10 minutes. They might end up with a slight tan.
Yes.
Because some of these are ridiculously powerful.
Oh, they're insane.
So the digger comes over, confirms everything then. There's a brief bit where Uncle Joe asks him about, how's your father? Yeah. How's he doing?
Isabel? How is she?
She's fine.
What'd she say about your father?
She went to see him again. He's still the same.
They kind of confirmed the time jump then. He's like, they said 6 months and stuff like that.
Yeah.
in Improvement in 6 months they wouldn't see anything.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get the time of passage with that. So then they decide they're going to blow it, and there's this wonderful moment between Joe and John, where John, Peter Cushing's character, turns around and he's like,
I've worked in dozens of tombs. Seems the best part of my life's been spent amongst the dead. But I've never worked in a place that had such an aura of menace.
Yeah.
And he's just like, we don't want to go back in there, so they seal it up. And the true nature of, hiring slaves to do your digging, they also get one of them to light the fuse.
Yeah, once they hide behind
they hide behind the massive rock. Don't worry about him, he'll be fine.
Yeah, they give him a thumbs up.
Yeah, that's all he gets is a thumbs up. Now light it and run quick enough so you don't get blown up.
Health and safety would have a field day.
So they blow the tomb up, sealing it back in. Things all's well, fine, go ahead, nothing's going to happen now. And then we cut to Bay, who reveals his true intentions and how he fits into this entire film, basically.
Great God, Karnak, Father of all living things, hear these words from me, the humblest of your servants. For this desecration, you will be avenged. Though it takes me years of earthly time, I shall re-enter the tomb and find the instrument of your revenge.
And you get the true nature of how far he's willing to go as well. Because he turns around and says, basically, if it takes earthly years, I'll do it and I'll avenge you.
Yeah.
And it's quite harrowing. To an extent, not, the same as Victor Frankenstein and Dracula. No. But you're like, okay, some shit's going to go down here.
Yeah, there's going to be some shenanigans.
Shenanigans. But then there's this wonderful moment then we cut straight to England, this lovely English countryside in 1898, so you're 3 years on. Oh. And the score, I think they kind of emulated Bernard's previous scores a little bit in this.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities in kind of the cadences.
But for me, this is one of my favourite moments for the score of the film. You start off on this lovely English countryside, and the music's all tranquil and lovely and peaceful, and then it slowly cross-dissolves to a big building, and the music gets more harrowing and more haunting and more weird. And then it just stops on that sign, in Gorefield Nursing Home for the Mentally Disordered.
Yeah, I like that, mentally disordered.
I know. It sounds better than mentally ill, doesn't it?
And mental asylum.
Oh, yeah.
Or insane asylum.
Arkham Asylum.
Yeah. That's the criminally insane.
Yeah. Not just the insane, the criminally insane.
Yeah. And it reminds me of Seward's practice. It's almost like a haunted house. You don't want to go there.
Yeah.
It's an old establishment, and it has that bronze sign on the front, and it is for people who are mentally unwell.
It's never going to, I can't really recall a film where any of these places would look good. Don't you dare say One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That was the first one that came to mind.
No!
Fucking Nurse Ratchet. I still haven't forgiven her for what she did to Buddy Bibbit.
Yeah.
That was horrendous, man.
It was really sad.
That was his first feature film, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's fantastic and everything. He doesn't get the props that he deserves.
What's his name? Brad Dourif, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that.
He's fantastic at voice work.
It's if you watched him recording lines for Chucky, it's fascinating to watch.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be in the booth with him.
You stupid bitch, you filthy slut! Did you fuck with me?
It's not like recording with Woody and Buzz, is it?
Yeah.
So we're in the home for the mentally disordered, where Steve now resides, and they've gone in to meet the doctor, him and Isabel.
Yeah, 'cause he's informed them that he's now
asking for him. Yeah, he's asking for him for some reason, and John turns around and he's like, well, after 3 years, why now?
Yeah.
He can't seem to understand it. The doctor can't really make much sense of it. He thinks he's had a stroke.
Yeah.
Should be incurable.
Could this mean that he's going to get better?
I don't know, Mrs. Banning. His condition could be purely temporary.
May I see him?
Of course.
Shows you how bad it's got, though, because the doctor turns around and he's like, I suggest alone.
Yeah.
Like...
It's the Chadman's line in Curse of Frankenstein. A woman's mind can't comprehend this.
Terrible human being.
That's our Paul.
I'm Paul Kremper.
So Cushing goes in to see Steve, his father, who, considering it's only 3 years on, he looks horrendous.
Yeah, he's got grey hair now.
It kind of reminds me of... We're bringing back the Lord of the Rings now. But who's that guy in Two Towers? The king.
Theoden.
Yeah, this under the
Yeah.
The curse from Saruman, sorry,
Yeah.
with Brad Dourif's Grimmer Wormtongue or something like that. Yeah.
Wormtongue.
It just reminded me of that. He looks awful, like deathly pale, like really old, and
when they first introduced Peter Cushing, John, as Steve's son,
he looked better. He looked better than me.
Yeah, I just thought, Christ, this is a Paul and the Baron situation again. I mean, he didn't look older than Steve.
If one of them had facial hair, he would have been a difference.
Yeah, maybe they should just give him facial hair whilst he's sitting there in the chair, rather than just going, no, it's just white.
He was deathly pale in this. Like, disturbingly pale.
I know they say that your hair can turn white, or, you can lose the pigments in the colour of the hair.
I mean,
fear.
I'm kind of like going through that now, where I think it's just more my 30s than fear.
Yeah, like, it's been 3 years, maybe at a push 4.
Yeah.
No sign of going grey or white or anything. The briefs are completely gone, and like you say, he's deathly pale.
Yeah. On top of him looking as horrendous as he does, he then turns around and he's like, "Why are you limping?"
Yeah,
and it's such a fantastic moment of irony. When he turns around, he's like, "Oh, something happened." He's like, "Well, you should have gone and get it set it properly." It's like you're the one that told him to make his own decision, you twat.
Yeah, it's like he's got a mental block of the events that happened.
I mean, up to a certain point, because then obviously it goes into... He turns around to his son then, he's like, "I wanted to tell you about the mummy."
Yeah.
And Cushing's obviously like, "Oh yeah, the one that we've got, she's on display in the museum, like, it's fine." He's like, "No, not that one, you idiot." The alive one, I think he says, and obviously Peter Cushing at this point thinks he's...
Raving.
That's wise. In a home for the mentally disordered.
Yeah.
But he turns around and says...
Came from the rock when I read the scroll.
What scroll?
The scroll of life. After 4,000 years, the words of the scroll brought it to life again.
On a sense, you get Steve knows a bit more than he's letting on here. Because I think, in a certain sense, it's kind of hinted to. He can sense that the mummy's returned. Obviously, what happens next, you really get the feeling that he knows the mummy's returned.
Yeah, because he starts reacting and smashing the windows up and stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah, before we get to that, Mike, we've got this wonderful scene that follows. Quite a comical one, quite a very big juxtaposition to what we've just had and been going through. Going from a home from the mentally disordered to two Irish guys half cut in a pub.
So going to an establishment of
joy.
Disorder.
Well, yeah, to a mentally disordered place. Why do people drink? Because they're mentally disordered.
So he says it don't make no difference what you cart in, so long as you get paid for it.
So you says?
To which I was forced to agree. Times being what they are.
But he didn't tell you what was in it.
When I was rewatching the film and it cut to the pub and it introduced the two Irish characters, the one of them is talking but with very little Irish accent or Irish twang, and he's very gruff, and then the other one starts talking quite quickly with an Irish twang, and I just sat there and thought, oh, it's me and Adam.
What cracked me up in this scene though, and hopefully people watching this will pick up on it as well. How many times does he go to have a swig of his pint, but then stops and says something else? I'm like, dude, just have, for my sake, just have a sip of your beer. That's really annoying me. Just have a fucking sip of your beer. And then he goes, well, we got to get going anyway. Just next the point.
Yeah.
we follow into probably my favourite bit of the film.
I'll drive, you're drunk.
It's my cart. My horse is I'll drive. Poor dear old horse. A man's best friend is a horse.
It's a dog.
It's a horse. I'm not that drunk. And I'll drive.
Right, you'll drive.
And it's just such a good scene, it just breaks it up.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like, bits of it were a bit slow in the build-up to this, and this was just, like, a nice break and a nice bit of humour.
You know, having that comedic element, which Sangster pretty much renowned for
well,
in his script.
As you referred to it earlier, the Sangster cocktail.
Yeah. The Sangster cocktail that consists of gore, very
Sick.
descriptive pain and suffering.
Sick, twisted sense of humour.
Yep. And then eventually nudity, but that comes a little later.
That comes later.
But again, that turned into something people expected to see in a Hammer horror film.
It was a trope then.
Yeah, it's the same as, like, you know, you watch something made by Tarantino, you know you're going to get gore in it.
Yeah, or Samuel Jackson. They mention, as soon as they get onto the carriage, should we tie this down? Immediately. You know something's going to happen where it's going to fall off.
It is like watching, like, a very early version of Dumb and Dumber. It is really funny to see. But they go past the home for the mentally disordered.
Yeah.
And obviously Steve knows what the fuck is going on.
Yep.
He starts going absolutely mental and, like, smashes the room up and everything. Scares the shit out of the two drivers.
Yeah.
Because, oh my god, somebody's breaking up from the mental asylum. So they go.
Yeah, I'm not getting stabbed.
Yeah, and then he turns around and he's like, oh, he needs to slow down, it's really bumpy.
Yeah.
And then he just goes and bang, that's it. Coughing goes straight into the swamp.
Yeah, yeah.
So then we go to the aftermath. I'd say the crash, but it's not really a crash. They kind of just illegally dumped something in the swamp, basically, by accident.
Yeah, I was going to say, unintentionally illegally dumped something.
But the police is questioning the two drivers. So they're obviously dredging the swamp because they want to pull it out of the swamp.
Yeah, and they've established that some sections of the swamp are almost bottomless.
Yeah, that was a very quick, like, snippet of information, but it meant that, if somebody goes into there, they can potentially die.
Yeah, and they're not coming back. I was a bit thrown off when Bay appears.
I was about to say that. It threw me a bit, because it's not even like there's no introduction, he just randomly just appears. Kind of like he's already 2 steps ahead of people.
Yeah. You was expecting this box?
Yes, I was. I engaged this man and his companion to transport it from the station.
I see. Well, hard luck, isn't it?
When I was rewatching it, I was just a bit put off by his reaction. I just thought this is really lazy. Like, lazy writing, lazy performance, like, this...
But then...
It's a shame.
You find out later.
Exactly. But in that moment, I just thought, you wouldn't react that way.
Yeah. One thing I picked up on as well in this, and again, it's sign of the times, the police officer is a bit, like, standoffish, because he's foreign, essentially.
Yeah, they make a point of that through the film, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they even reference that creepy red hat man is creepy.
Scary red hat man.
That's the one.
Do we call him Bale or do we call him Scary Wet Hat Man? I do like Scary Wet Hat Man, I gotta be fair.
Petition to change his name. After the events of the night before, John's back with...
the doctor.
I suppose he's the director of the whole place, like a clinical director.
Yeah.
And he informs John that they've now had to relocate Steve to a padded cell. For his safety and the safety of everybody else as well.
Yeah, because he basically smashed up the room.
Yeah.
But the doctor turns around to John and he's like, any idea why?
Yeah, it's like, this is out of character. He's been almost comatose for 3 years.
Yeah.
And now, all of a sudden, he's talking and the next thing he's...
smashing his room up.
And getting aggressive.
So then we go back to Bay, and this is where we see him with the Scroll of Life, and lo and behold, we get our first glimpse of Christopher Lee as the title character of the Mummy.
That ye may walk again the land of Kem in all thy strength and beauty, and wear once more the Uraret.
So this first glimpse of Lee as the Mummy is pretty creepy.
Covered in sludge and slime and anything else that comes from the
swamp.
But interestingly though, the makeup artist for this film was credited as an assistant from our previous episode.
Learning from the best then, it's Philip Leakey was the makeup guy on the first here.
You'd alluded to Leakey's work on the monster in Curse of Frankenstein, using household items and things like that. And then in this one, it's almost like, well, now he's got the tools to do it,
and the
unfortunately,
money.
it wasn't him who did it.
Yeah, that is a little bit unfortunate, because obviously you can see the Universal come in with money behind them in this. Big time.
You can see it in the mummy's design. A guy called Roy Ashton, who was an assistant on the previous films with Leakey.
Yeah.
He's the one who takes the helm as the lead makeup
Oh,
artist.
okay.
What are your thoughts on the design?
It was very simplistic, but it worked well.
Yeah.
Him coming out of the swamp was terrifying. It's such a good moment. I will say the arms annoyed me a little bit when he was getting up.
Yeah.
Obviously, you find out why later on.
Yeah.
But I was a bit like, he's a mummy, he's got fucking strength, he could just whip these bandages if he wanted to, just get his arms a bit looser. But again, a great performance from Christopher Lee as the monster, considering he's buried under this amount of makeup.
Yeah.
As you said earlier on in this podcast, he kind of took a step back from Dracula in this, because he was in minimal makeup in Dracula, so he had everything. He was able to utilise like everything at his disposal as an actor, whereas you under makeup you can only use X, Y and Z.
Yeah, exactly. A testament again to Christopher Lee, and I think we sung his praises in both previous episodes.
We will in every podcast, to be fair, Mike.
He somehow manages to make a three-dimensional character through his performance.
It was his eyes more than anything.
Exactly, that's what I was going to mention.
Yeah.
It's his eyes, how he does it. In Curse of Frankenstein, it was the way he moved his body.
Yeah.
We mentioned about him being like a dog, and he's almost like Bambi, struggling on his feet. In Dracula, he's the wolf in sheep's clothing. In this, like you say about his eyes, he's very sympathetic.
Again, we'll get to it when we actually talk about the scene in the podcast, but he does come across as quite sad, sympathetic, and maybe even a little bit pathetic.
Through me, guide this thy servant on his appointed task. Go now. Go and destroy those who desecrated the tomb of our princess. Those unbelievers who gazed upon her long-dead face.
As we mentioned at the start of the podcast, he got put through the mill a little bit in this film, and his movements might not all necessarily be his performance.
No.
There was some piping and equipment and stuff in the swamp underneath, and poor Christopher Lee couldn't see where his piping and everything else was, ended up injuring his knees, his shins, while doing a lot of the scenes in the tank. At least they didn't blind him this time, though.
His eyes were safe.
His eyes were safe. His knees, shins, back, legs, shoulders.
Knees and toes, knees and toes.
Once out of the swamp, and once he's got over his ailments of smashing into all the equipment under the water, Bay is now commanding him to go and take vengeance on all those that desecrated Ananka's tomb.
A very sick, twisted, macabre sense of humour. They put him in a padded room for his own protection.
Yeah.
And the guy who puts him in there and basically puts him to bed is like, we can't hear you at all in this room, so you have to ring the bell by the side of the bed. It's funny, but it's sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Because he's obviously in bed, and then we get that lovely silhouette over the frosted glass window.
That's right,
of Christopher Lee displaying absolute brute strength, because he just rips the bars off the windows.
That's right, yeah.
And poor Steve runs straight over to the door and starts banging and pow. Poor bastard, like. And then by the time he realises he's meant to ring the bell, and the mummy's inside at that point, so he's screwed. Lee's performance, this mummy's not messing around, he goes in, guess what he needs to get done, and then just goes again.
So the BBFC...
Yay, back to the letter!
They make mention of this scene. For pages 40 to 41 of the original script, the BBFC requested the killing of Banning, which is Steve, John's father, of course, in the room, by the mummy should not be overdone. We would not want prolonged shots of throttling. Close-ups of Banning's eyes turning up as he is throttled.
I mean, yeah.
Or and they put it in quotes, so they've lifted it from the script. Cracking snap as Banning's neck breaks.
Oh, oh, that would have been something.
So it wasn't just strangling then, he snaps his neck.
He snaps his neck, yeah. You don't hear the crack.
No,
so yeah, obviously the BPFC managed to get their way with that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been sick, man.
That would have been brutal.
I mean, I'm not complaining. Sick is in a good sense. Like, you know. But yeah, that would have been something, especially 1959.
Yeah. If you think mainstream cinema at the time,
yeah,
when anybody's struck or stabbed, it's usually a musical cue. So
yeah,
you would get kind
or
of
you
like,
get a sound effect.
Yeah,
yeah.
You wouldn't get the actual sound of the stab or break-in of different things.
And we're light years away from the splatter decade in the 80s.
I mean, we're only 1 year removed from Psycho.
Yeah, because that got into a lot of issues. Yeah. That's another great behind-the-scenes story for another podcast.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Because Alfred Hitchcock was just an absolute legend for doing what he did.
Well, especially going against the censors.
Yeah. Something you don't really do as a filmmaker.
No.
You kind of just, okay, fine, I'm not happy with it, but I'll do it.
Yeah, yeah.
The very nature of this deed points to the fact that it was committed by some homicidal maniac. And if it were not for the evidence of forced entry, I would have no hesitation in telling the doctor of the nursing home to look among his own inmates.
It's a little bit strange that they hold a, I suppose, legal hearing in the director's office.
I suppose you're right, but at the same time, it's a location they haven't really used a lot, and it doesn't appear at any other point after this moment in the film, does it?
The relative's dead that was there, so there's no point going back. You don't just turn up and be like, oh, house call.
Yeah, this hearing, they basically trying to determine how he died.
Yeah.
Basically, he puts down, he's like, well, we'll investigate it, but, you know, I don't think anything will turn up. But the verdict is murder by person or persons unknown. And it's like, okay, congratulations, thanks for that. What am I meant to do with that? It's a bit of a bizarre scene, isn't it? It feels a bit out of touch. But is this input from Universal? This is where Universal's stepping in and being like, you need to put this in, you need to put that in, make this more theatrical. And
potentially, yeah. It could be interference.
Because it feels a couple of times that it kind of veers a little bit away from what we've had from Hammer in the previous two films.
Yeah, this one feels less like the others.
Yeah.
And that's including things like Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
X from the Unknown and those films, which feel like, even though they don't have the same tropes and the same imagery, they feel like a Hammer film. This one feels more like somebody imitating Universal. And this scene, as well as the other scenes where we have the inspector, the different investigations that are undertook by the inspector later on, they just feel like you're not looking at what's playing in front of you and what's obvious. A man who has died in a room where somebody has forced their way in and murdered him. Then you have his brother, who, again, the house is broken into, and he's murdered. The son is the common denominator. And you don't really go, right, I'm going to arrest you and question you.
Yeah.
It's more of, you're talking about some mummy, that sounds like an alibi. Let's take you away. I'm getting ahead of myself, but this was kind of like another moment where I thought, this is lazy.
Wow. So Cushion's speaking to his uncle after the hearing, and they're like, well, he kept a record of everything. If he has some sort of an enemy or something, we'll find it in his records, because he was proper anal about keeping records of everything, apparently. Not really to much avail, either. They don't really seem to get anywhere.
No, they flesh out the character itself, and they give us a bit more backstory to him, a lot of exposition for it. And one of the things that I absolutely hate in anything I watch, you're telling me about this character. I didn't get any of that when you were showing me. And I know it's kind of like bits of information of their past.
Well, it goes in and sets up, basically, the flashback scene into the backstory of the characters, isn't it?
But then they're also talking about, oh, he's the type of man who is always late on paying the bills. He'll act like everything's, magical and fine, and then there's a knock at the door and the bailiffs are here to pick up the bill.
Yeah.
Type of thing. And it's like, okay, this is interesting as explaining what type of man, his father was, what type of character he is. You didn't really show us anything, so
Yeah.
I don't particularly care.
Kind of null and void at that point.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Like, we're not going to see him again,
Yeah.
except in flashbacks. So you're flashing him out now when it should have been done before.
Yeah.
So then when his death was, it would have been a little bit more meaningful.
Sets up the backstory to the mummy and everything. Though,
Yeah, the history.
It's one thing me and you will agree on, weirdly, but I wasn't a fan of this entire section of the film.
No,
like,
I
at all.
absolutely hated it.
Just felt like filler, and it just felt very out of place for a Hammer film, and it kind of felt like Universal stepped in and being like, you need to make this more extravagant and theatrical and play into the theatrical side of the story and really embrace that, and it was just a bit like, really? But at the same time, these are the only scenes Christopher Lee really gets to spread his wings, so to speak.
Yeah, and actually be able to act.
Use everything at his disposal as an actor, essentially.
Yeah. It's almost identical to the 1932 flashback where we're learning more about Imhotep and what happened with him. We get it here with Kharis falling in love with a princess.
A forbidden love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to Imhotep in 99 as well.
But that was done well.
That was done well.
In the year 2000 BC, the Princess Ananka, high priestess of the temple of Karnak, set out on a pilgrimage. She was bound for Amtak, the reputed birthplace of her god.
There were actually several requests from BBFC.
For this entire sequence? Oh, right. So, I think one of them is going to be, because it was probably my only favourite part of this flashback scene, was when all the women get sacrificed.
What did he say? Kinda close.
I'm going to say not like showing that in any explicit detail, essentially. It's probably going to be one of them.
Okay.
When you're showing the anointing, because they did the very PC way of displaying a nude body.
Yeah.
Of like, let's accidentally put like a supporting wall frame by there.
Yeah.
The very normal way of doing it in the film. Oh, I'm trying to think of any others. Nothing blasphemous must have been another one.
I think for this, it wouldn't have really come under the radar because it was nothing to do with Christianity.
But I mean, if you carting a mummy through the street on a cross, spread out like Jeebus, that would be very blasphemous. Or if you crucified somebody, because that shit happened back then.
Yeah, but they don't.
Yeah, I know they don't, but...
Yeah. And I think for this, because it's Egyptian, and,
they kind of just let them have free reign.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like how Bride of Frankenstein, 1935, MPAA, BBFC were all over it because they had Frankenstein's monster on a stake with his hands tied above his head, which in some variations of the Christian text is actually what happened rather than
really?
a crucifix. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. You'd be right to think something blasphemous.
Go on then, what were these suggestions then, Mike?
The first one is in reference to page 56, in which they write, "We hope that you will be reasonable about the screams when the Nubians are being slaughtered out of frame. The 6 maidens appear to be slaughtered in frame, and must give you a strong caution about this, and about any subsequent shots of the maidens weltering in their gore, e.g. page 58. If not shot with discretion, these scenes might cause us a lot of trouble." So, you were completely right about the maidens.
Yeah.
The next moment they talk about is when they're starting the process of Kharis being mummified, in reference to pages 60 to 61. While we would accept the tongue being cut out off screen,
I was going to say that was quite explicit.
We would not want the direct quote from the script, "small piece of mangled bloody flesh held up afterwards for public view. Nor would we want shots of Kharis after the operation with blood coursing down his chin."
So like Jabba the Hutt dying with blood then basically. That was a scene I didn't mind, the mummification one. But I had major issues with the fact that he was just so willing to fucking walk into the tomb he was being locked into for eternity.
Yeah, and with people just outside the tomb that You know, they have full view of those doors. It didn't really make any sense. He left the doors open as well. And also, they capture him just before he says the magic words to bring her back.
Yeah.
You've just got caught, say them.
Yeah.
Like, just do it.
Will
You've
they...
got nothing to lose now.
Because you can see that's an actress instead of a dummy, obviously.
Yeah.
Part of me's like, were they going to show her opening her eyes, but then thought...
Yeah, because she starts to move her eyes.
Yeah, because I thought originally you were going to see the eyes opening, and then he gets caught, and then he just goes...
Yeah.
Like Pac-Man dying.
Yeah, it makes me think of the 99 film when they have a Nuxamanoon.
Oh, the black shadow comes over it, and then just
She's
before he
screaming.
finishes it, comes back out again.
That's it, yeah.
Even, like, you don't see him cutting the tongue, you haven't really seen something this out there, shall we say, or explicit.
With Curse and Dracula, Curse, it's all two dead bodies or off-screen. Dracula, it's either a bite or it's off-screen. This is probably the first time that Hammer have something on-screen.
Oh, yeah.
Albeit it's hidden.
It's
a
out
very
of
small
view,
way.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that moment of where they're pulling at the tongue.
Yeah.
And you see him, you know, open his mouth, putting his tongue out a bit. You see the little clamp going towards it. Then it cuts to behind.
Yeah.
And you see the kind of like pull forward and the jerk forward.
Yeah.
And then the knife coming down. And instead of kind of like a nice clean...
Yeah, you hear the...
He's like soaring
yeah,
through.
that is bad, man.
No, I did like that. That was the only part I liked.
One of the only
flashback.
bits.
Yeah. Of the flashback.
Of the flashback.
And the last BBFC recommendation came on the 23rd of February 1959 when they submitted a revision of the original script. So they've taken all the other considerations into consideration.
Okay. It's a good way of putting it, Mike.
And then they wrote back after receiving the revised script saying, "We've had a look at the revised script of The Mummy and have the following comments to make."
Oh, go on then.
So, in reference to the scenes that we're talking about, the flashbacks, scenes 99 to 148, there appear to be only two problems in these sequences.
Okay.
A, as scripted, the princess's costume is either transparent or non-existent, and I imagine the same would apply to the other maidens, including those slaughtered. I suggest that you take the precaution of having alternative takes for these scenes in case, as I expect, they present difficulties as a result of the nudity. B, the slaughter of the 6 maidens, as scripted, looks pretty unpleasant. And I must repeat the cautions given in my letter on the 5th of February.
Pretty unpleasant.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a pleasant way of sacrificing somebody?
I don't know. Wicker Man was a bit tame.
Oh God! Oh Jesus Christ!
That was tame. My God, Mike. If you think that's tame, I hate to think what you think is bad.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, I was going to say don't answer that question. So basically, to summarise, we see the backstory for Kharis' character, and he's in love with
Ananka,
that's it. She passed away travelling, as we know, and he basically tries to resurrect her using the Scroll of Life, which is obviously forbidden as well.
Yeah.
So he gets punished by being mummified alive and having his tongue cut out and everything.
Yeah, and he's to be the protector of the tomb, isn't he?
Yeah, basically doomed for eternity.
Yeah.
Like, poor guy just wanted to love someone. As both me and Mike said, we're not massive fans of this sequence and these scenes. But I will admit, you know, while they are a bit slow and they did show some of the boring stuff, it added a bit more to the characters.
Yeah.
And considering Lee is like so stuck under makeup, confined to what he can do as the Mummy, these are really the only scenes we get to see him spread his wings, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously he went from Dracula to this.
Yeah. It feels like a shame when you are watching it and he's lumbering around as a monster like he was in Curse of Frankenstein. Like you said, this scene is pretty much to allow him to actually have dialogue.
Yeah.
Thou art more beautiful than a goddess, and hast been begotten for transformations more numerous, and with a created form more perfect than those of the gods.
The one thing I don't get, like, it really wound me up when I was watching it, is how willing he is just to walk into the tomb. At least kick off a little bit, man. You're kind of being condemned to death here, essentially.
Well, he's devoted to Karnak, isn't he? As well as Ananka. And Ananka is supposed to be the living embodiment, or, you know, the highest point to Karnak that they can possibly get. he knows he was in the wrong.
Yeah.
Because he was a forbidden love, as you said.
Kind of just accepts his fate then.
Yeah. What else is he going to do? Can't exactly run away. They're in the middle of nowhere. Instead of burying her closer to where she was born, it's closer to where she died on the trail.
Yeah. And he's had his tongue cut out, so he can't speak to anyone anyway, if he did manage to run away.
Can't call for help.
Like I said, we're kind of just summarising this bit now, and then we come back to Cushing, wrapping up the story now.
He says that his father told him the story.
Yeah, and thinks he got maybe a little bit too involved with it and believed it a bit too much, and that's what drove him mad.
They followed the story to a point to find Ananka's tomb.
Yeah.
Why is it not... Why would they not believe that Kharis would be there too? And why didn't they look for him?
Yeah, that is a bit of a loophole in the story.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't believe in the fairy tale element of him overseeing the tomb for the rest of his days,
yeah,
he's still gonna be there according to the story that they've already followed to find Ananka's tomb.
Yeah, so to a point they should really be expecting it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit of a... As I said before, hindsight is a wonderful thing, Michael. Good old hindsight. And that, of course, takes us to Lee being woken up again by... Bay, scary red hat man. We get the reveal now on Christopher Lee of the dried makeup. It looks fantastic.
I've got to admit, I love the kind of like gooey marsh man that he was when he came out.
Near Tarman in like Return of the Living Dead.
You haven't got a tongue so you can't shout brains.
Brains.
But then seeing him in the dry version, it reminds me of Karloff's makeup when they first open up the sarcophagus.
Yeah, and he has that very slow open his eyes and the reveal,
It reminds me of that, but charcoal-y and like he's been burnt and stuff.
Yeah, like dirtier, basically.
That was one thing I wanted to mention about within the flashback.
Yeah.
When we were talking about his costume design for when
it looked really like poor, didn't it?
It looked like a nappy. And a bunch of like, I don't know, just like
Andrex toilet paper.
Yeah, just wrapped around it, and it looked shit.
Yeah, it didn't look good. But then obviously when you see it again later, we get the reveal.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's like, well, this bandage or this nappy is aged perfectly. This one.
It just looks brilliant. It looks like it's stuck to his body, whereas before it was very loose fitting and wasn't stuck to his body.
I suppose like kind of what happens when somebody's just left to rot in a tomb for a while.
Everything sticks to them.
among other things, you kind of just disintegrate slowly, don't you? At least the different bits, obviously, between this and the 99 one, for example. Like the 99 one was far more brutal.
I was going to ask you, which would you prefer? Being buried alive in a sarcophagus in the tomb of Ananka, or being eaten alive by scavengers?
Oh, dude, being eaten alive would be way worse. Be
Is
way
it,
like, worse. Like... Yeah, that would not be a nice way to go.
No.
I mean, who was the guy, the one that like came along, the really smelly guy?
Oh, that was
the comedian.
Jalili.
Yeah, like when it. I know even now the effects don't look great on it, but at the time when it like buries into and he goes into his shoe and then you see it over his chest, and it freaked me the fuck out first time I saw that.
I love it where he's like taking them off the wall, putting them in his little knapsack. He's mimicking the person being eaten alive.
Yeah, I know.
And then he just runs headfirst into a wall.
Yeah. It's when he's on about the camels and he's like, oh, don't like camels, they stink, they smell, they spit. Just cut to him.
He was brilliant.
You are. Didn't John Hannah whip him at some point just while he's snoring? Just passing it. But, of course, that wouldn't be a thing if it weren't for, like, this or the 32 Memi.
No. Or the, I think it's 92.
The 92?
Yeah, it's a really bad TV movie.
Oh, I haven't seen that. What happened in that one?
Not a lot. The mummy's just going around killing people.
I mean, I think that's one thing that this film could have used more of. Was Lee just causing mayhem as the monster.
I'm glad... what I appreciate a bit more about the 59 version in comparison to, say, some of the other mummy films that came after, like the B-movie caliber ones, is they actually put a story in there. They didn't give enough background to each character or flesh them out that much.
Yeah.
Kharis seemed to be the one that had the most, well, he had a character arc.
Yeah.
Ish, if you can call it that.
Yeah. I mean, he had more than, like, Steve and Uncle Joe.
And
they
John and...
I mean, John had a bit of one. They didn't really go into much detail about, like, him and Isabel and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was like a sudden thing, wasn't it? It was like, oh, have you heard from Isabel? Yeah.
And, yeah, then, like, she becomes, like, a pretty integral part of the story later on.
I mean,
and saves him, like, multiple times. So.
I don't expect, like, a film to be like, oh, this is where they were born, and in
yeah,
school
God, yeah,
that's
just, you don't need to know all the ins and outs, like, but you need to know enough.
Yeah, but then
you need to know enough to, like, give a shit about them, basically.
And you want a character to appear more than a two-dimensional cardboard cutout.
Yeah.
I mean, the performances, anyway, stop it from being a cardboard cutout. Yeah. But they're still very two-dimensional.
True. Which brings us to our next point. One of the best characters in the film, the good old drunk again. What is he setting traps or something?
Yeah, he's trying to kill squirrels or something.
He just looks dodgy as fuck, whatever he's doing. Just, like, stupidly wandering around in the wilderness.
Yeah.
At, like, cause it's not early either, this is at night time. But this is quite a comical scene. It's not very long, it's just literally like a couple of seconds. And he doesn't really know whether or not to believe what he's seeing.
Yeah, because he's setting a trap for, like you said, a squirrel or something.
Yeah.
He hears somebody coming along, so he hides in the bushes, and Lee just walks past him.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they cast a man who has bulging eyes. They're absolutely terrifying in the dark.
I thought it was Mighty Fowl, but for like 2 minutes, like...
I did have to search the actor whilst watching it.
Was he in anything else?
It's Michael Ripper.
Oh shit, is it?
Yeah, and I think this is like one of the only films where you have Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and Michael Ripper in a Hammer film together.
Bloody hell.
Because I think Michael Ripper's in like Plague of the Zombies.
Yeah. He pops up a couple of times.
Yeah, Quartermass. In the pit.
Oh shit! So that's.
I didn't
even realise. No.
And I saw his name whilst I was watching the film. It didn't click.
That's mad. But of course, this poor drunk guy. This is so traumatising. He has to rush straight back to the pub.
Yeah, he has 2 drinks.
Yeah. Next one, then he was like, "Oh, everything alright? Right, pour me another one." And he starts rambling about this, like, fucking 10-foot mummy he's seen. And people are like, you sure that's the first drink you've had?
Yeah.
10 foot tall he was, swathed in bandages, come lumbering through that wood like a great bear.
Who?
You mean what? I tell you, it wasn't human.
Are you sure that's the first one you've had tonight?
Have you been seeing the little people?
Oh, if it's little people, it's the biggest little people ever you heard anything about. I'll have another one of those.
So it's quite a comedic moment, to be fair.
I think anything that's in the public house, the pub, is a comedic scene.
So we get past this comedic scene in the pub, go back to Uncle Joe and John.
Yeah.
Joe's like, we can't find anything, we'll carry on tomorrow, basically.
Yeah, because they're looking through all of Steve's documents.
Yeah, because they said he was quite anal about keeping records, basically, didn't they? So, and poor Uncle Joe, he's only trying to go to bed at this point. Christopher Lee just burst straight through the door. Well, he didn't burst straight through the door, but we'll go into that in a minute.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
The door Christopher Lee burst through to come into the house was accidentally bolted by a grip before the scene was shot.
Yeah.
Obviously, Christopher Lee gave it his all. And basically it ended like, what's that one on Takeshi's Castle, Knock Knock? Where some of the doors are made of paper and some of them are made of wood. And you just sat there watching and you're going, oh, that's a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what happened to Christopher Lee.
You're through? Oh, no, you're not. Wrong door. Ow!
What a wazzock.
How many blame him? Like, What kind of a grip bolts a fucking door that somebody's going to break through?
Or what type of person runs headfirst into a door to win prize money?
A mummy.
Gotta provide for his children.
Trying to provide for his forbidden love. But yeah, he went to go straight through the door, hit it with such force that he dislocated his shoulder, but he did break the door, managed to get through it, and that was a shot that appeared in the film.
And it's pretty good.
You can kind of see the influences had on some of the other films. Like, it reminded me very much of when Jason busts through the door in some of the Friday the 13th films.
Instead of it being like a complete clean break as well.
Yeah.
Doors usually like a pivoting on something, or they fall to like a diagonal and stuff.
Well, that's down to the grip bolting it.
Yeah. But it looks good.
It was a happy accident.
Yeah.
Except for Christopher Lee.
His pain is our pleasure.
There's no fucking around here. He goes straight over and starts choking Uncle Joe.
The BBFC had a request for this scene.
Oh, no! BBFC, come on then, Mike. Sorry, this is quite interesting, folks.
In reference to page 66 to 67, the killing of Joseph needs the same kind of caution as that given for the killing of Stephen Banning. The throttling should not be too long, there should be no unpleasant close-ups, and once again, we should not like the brittle snap of the breaking neck.
We should not like?
Yeah.
What a way to word that. Like, we should not like? Are you kidding me?
It should have Gandalf read it. We should not like.
Yeah, again, because that's down to, what did they say in their previous, a rational audience?
Reasonably
minded. But they've said on their letter, we don't want to enjoy the neck snap.
They didn't use the word enjoy.
You Mandela affected me.
Well, they're saying we wouldn't enjoy the brittle snap of a breaking neck. We should not like.
Yeah.
And think about how English is transitioned over time. We don't say, I should not like this.
Who the fuck speaks
like
like
that?
I don't. Like? Yeah, I don't, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
So straight over starts choking Uncle Joe. Cushing comes in, tries to help, just gets swatted off like a fly, basically. Yeah. He runs over to his gun case and takes out, I think it's a revolver or something, isn't it?
Yeah, the first weapon's a revolver.
Yeah, he doesn't upgrade until later. He didn't get the mystery box until later.
Doesn't help his arsenal.
No. He gets shot twice. He's very trigger happy in this scene, Peter Cushing. He hits him twice, but then he comes out and he just...
I started blasting. Bang! Bang! Well, I don't see so good, so I missed. Then they ran away. I ran after them.
Okay.
Bang! Try to shoot him in the back. But I don't want so good either.
So yeah, very trigger happy. Absolutely chaotic.
And those squibs as well, just all the dust coming out of Kharis.
Yeah, that was a fantastic makeup effect. They managed to hurt Christopher Lee again this time, though, Mike, didn't they?
With all the burns.
When Cushing shot Christopher Lee, the squibs they used actually burned Christopher Lee for real. Just for later on in the film, when he does carry Isabel, we are getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but he threw his back out as well when he was carrying her. The poor bastard. I hope they paid him at least a little bit more for this film.
No wonder why he couldn't glide up the stairs.
I know!
In Lord of the Rings.
Because Hammer fucked him up, that's why. Well, not Hammer specifically, but...
The views and opinions expressed by the host do not reflect that of the store and its management.
The BBFC make mention of the squibs.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, they're not seeing it, they're imagining it from the text in the script.
Yeah.
So in reference to page 68, the shots of the mummy with, and they quote from the script, a great gaping hole in the bandages, and in what passes for flesh underneath, but which is in fact a dirty grey mould-like substance, should not be as unpleasant and gruesome as these words suggest that it might be.
Yeah, it does sound a lot worse in a script than what we actually got.
Yeah, and like I mentioned with the squib and the dust coming out and things like that,
yeah,
it's revealing the underpart of the bandaging, but it just looks like another layer within.
So it's not as horrendous as some of the other stuff we've seen Hammer do.
Any damage done to Kharis, I really liked how it looked. Especially with the squibs, as I said, projecting the dust out, or you see the flaps kind of pop up.
It was my favourite part is coming up
Yeah, that was also mine. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here. So following the chaotic attack from the mummy, Uncle Joe's dead. The inspector has turned up now, speaking to Peter Cushing in the aftermath of the attack. And this is where Cushing says...
All right, Inspector. I believe the intruder was a mummy. A living mummy.
A mummy. One of these Egyptian things?
That's right.
I thought they were always dead people.
They usually are, but rights this one should be dead too.
Now look,
Now, Inspector, would you sit down, please?
Just like very blunt and to the point. And this is where we find out what happened in the tomb earlier in the film when all we heard was the scream off screen.
Which is another flashback, but not as far as the Kharis backstory.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's just where they discover the tomb and it's Steve in the tomb. And this is where he gets attacked by the mummy.
This heart with tenderness, that he may walk.
This reveal, for me, was better than the original reveal in the swamp. Like, this was
With the door slowly
this was way more haunting. And the fact that you just got that long shot in the background and you can't see his fucking eyes at all, they're just black. It's terrifying.
I'd go with the swamp one.
Yeah?
I like the lighting of the swamp one, and I like how Lee comes out of the water.
Yeah. Very creepy, regardless.
Yeah.
Lee goes over and attacks Steve, and this threw me a bit, because I wasn't expecting it. Bay comes in. But this is what I didn't get. If he said he's going to get the mummy to kill everyone who's desecrated the tomb, he's got Steve right there, just kill him.
Technically, they hadn't stolen anything at that point.
But then part of me is also thinking, Steve's lost his marbles at this point.
Yeah, he lost them good.
So wouldn't it be worse to just leave him in that state and make him suffer?
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm going to let their family suffer, not knowing what happened to him.
Wow.
We find out here that this is where Bay gets hold of the scroll as well when he locks Christopher Lee's mummy back up. And then we cut back to Cushing wrapping the story up then.
Yeah,
basically saying this is what my father told me happened. And the inspector turns around and he's like, you're mad.
With his lazy eyelids.
Yeah. This cracked me up as well. How many times does the inspector say facts?
I deal in facts, Mr. Banning. Cold, hard facts. Facts, facts. Facts, Mr. Banning, not fantasies.
And then, of course, we come back to our favourite character of the film.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, the inspector's gone down, he's questioning him. Starts off and he's like, when he's like 10 foot, and the inspector looks at him like, really? And he's like, oh no, 7 foot.
Yeah.
Just immediately starts changing his story.
Describe him to me, please.
Oh, but sir, he was horrible, sir. He was about 10 foot high and...
How high?
Well, 7'6". Yeah, he'd be about that, sir. About 7'6", 7'7".
And we kind of get like a little bit of a montage here of the inspector kind of just going around and trying to make sense of what the hell's going on. He starts putting the pieces together and more people are saying, okay, something's going on here.
They're all pretty much pointing towards the common denominator of the outsider to the community, this foreign man who's just purchased a new big house.
And Egyptian relics.
Yeah.
In quote unquote marks. Because he never really tells people. He's just like, oh, they're relics from Egypt.
And this is also where we, well, for me, it
answers the question of why he turned up at the...
Why he turned up and why he was so blasé about it.
Yeah, because at the time, as you said, like, it didn't really make much sense.
Yeah, and it annoyed me, the reaction to it. I thought it was very lazy. But it made sense that, you know, they're noticing it too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just an audience perception of, oh, that's kind of bad. So yeah, I was very happy to have this scene.
It was a good scene, obviously moved the plot ahead.
Yeah.
Something, you know, they could have really followed this format for the flashback scenes.
Yeah.
We see Bay now waking Kharis up again.
Yeah.
To go and kill the last one that desecrated the grave or the tomb.
The last task is upon us, O Karnak. Watch over us, as you have watched over me during the past 3 years.
And he basically says, like, go and kill him and then, you know, I'll let you die then. You've fulfilled your side of the deal. You can die in peace then.
The one that will release him from his eternal bondage.
So then we come to a bit of a weird scene, as I said earlier, with Isabel, where they don't really give a lot of...
anything.
Yeah, they don't give a lot on it. And he kind of just cuts to Peter Cushing. He's sat studying a picture of the princess.
Yeah.
she comes in and starts speaking to him, and then he just turns around and he's like,
It's extraordinary. I've never noticed it before, but with your hair like that, you're the image of Ananka.
Am I?
I love this discourse between the two of them, because he mentions she was considered the most beautiful woman in the world, and Isabel's like, oh, I'm flattered. And he was like, yeah, they considered the world to be a lot smaller.
Giving her the compliment, but not giving her too much confidence as she leaves.
You're stuck with me.
Oh, mate, that's like borderline gaslighting. Fucking hell.
She was considered the most beautiful woman in the world.
Oh, I am flattered.
Mind you, the world wasn't so big then.
Oh, don't spoil it to me.
They did make a good casting choice for Ananka and Isabel, because of course it's the same character. It's like the 1932 version where they have an Aksamanun and can't think of her future name in there.
Yeah.
But like in this one, they got Yvonne Furneaux as both characters, and to be fair, bone structure, her eyes, everything, yeah, she's a very beautiful woman.
Yeah. So Isabel is basically saying, oh, I hope the police do something. Bit of back and forth. As we said, the wonderful comment from Cushion.
Yeah.
And Cushion's like, well, I told them, they didn't believe me, said I was mad, X, Y, and Z. So I've got to face him. I don't have a choice. So she's like, oh, we should just run away. And he's like, no, I need to face him. End of story. It's going to keep happening.
Yeah.
He basically orders her to go upstairs and lock herself in the room so she's safe. And he starts loading, I think it's a shotgun or a rifle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not fucking around now.
No.
He knows, as he said, he's got to face if he don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So he's preparing for battle. So Lee's mummy is nearing.
Is she?
What? No, fuck. Right. So Kharis is
5 hours later.
So Kharis is nearing now.
Yeah.
And we get this wonderful silhouette on the windows.
Yeah, like the curtain.
Yeah.
Like, nets. And
they almost look like patio doors, basically. Like really fancy patio doors. We'll call it a window for argument's sake. We get this lovely silhouette of Cushion. Very much the same way we did on the Frosted Glass.
Yeah.
With Steve being killed in the Home for the Mentally Disordered. And Lee smashes through. It's fantastic effects. The sets didn't look like they were going to come down this time.
No, they looked sturdy.
Yeah, they looked a lot sturdier. So they get into this big fight, and there's this fantastic moment where Cushion picks up is it a spear?
Yeah, it's like one of the ornaments, but one of the relics.
Like
that they have
display
inside.
things, yeah. And just jumps down and drives it straight through him.
That,
and
like, thud straight through.
This is the bit me and you were on about a moment ago. Like, when he goes straight through and it's just like a puff of dust instead of blood. And it was like, dude, that is awesome.
It's fantastic. And in Flesh and Blood, the Hammer Heritage of Horror's TV film.
Oh, the documentary?
Yeah, for the BBC.
You're going to say BBFC.
I was going to say BBFC. They mentioned that Cushing had the suggestion to do that.
Okay.
And I suppose if we go back to like Dracula, where his suggestion to pull up the two candlesticks as a crucifix, rather than having an actual crucifix, this guy's got like some great suggestions.
Yeah.
And I'm really surprised the BBFC had no qualm with it, but then the document I'm reading from is the scripting stage, so it also adds a bit more weight to Peter Cushing on the fly, saying we could do this.
Well, didn't he want to do it because of the poster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The poster design with the light coming through the center of the torso.
great poster, to be fair.
Which, very reminiscent of The Wicker Man.
Oh, yeah, it is, isn't it? Well, The Wicker Man would be reminiscent of this, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say The Wicker Man definitely came out after this.
Yeah.
I was just sat there questioning myself then. Do you know when you write a word like the and you look at it and you're like, that's not spelled right.
Yeah, when you write it so many times.
Yeah,
like,
you're like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, go on then, Mike. What did the BBFC have to say on this subject?
So, in reference to page 86 of the original script, of course, the spear going through wouldn't have been in the original script.
It would have been some sort of fight or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
The attempted throttling of John should not be too long. That's our only suggestion.
Signed, Dr. Seuss.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that.
How did you not notice that?
I was just engrossed with history.
Fantastic scene, as we just discussed.
Yeah.
But cut short then, as Isabel comes back into the room.
Cut short like she ruined it.
Ruined the murdering.
Yeah.
But yeah, he stops throttling him.
Yeah.
And is completely and utterly besotted with her.
Yeah.
Because he thinks that she's the princess.
Yeah.
It's quite sad.
Yeah.
Really tragic. You feel sorry for the poor guy.
Yeah. There's a lot of sympathy.
I see. You won't even look her in the eye. Yeah, you won't even look her in the eye.
No.
He just keeps looking down like a fucking dog who's done something wrong.
I couldn't remember this scene, but when rewatching it, I expected him to kind of pick her up and then take her away.
Do the infamous monster carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we see it in, the
countless other films.
And it's similar in the 32, similar in the 99 variations of The Mummy.
Yeah.
But I quite liked that she caught him doing something wrong. And like you said about the dog looking down, he then puts his tail between his legs and leaves away from there because, of course, he was put there to protect her tomb, and now he's being used
as a pawn.
Yeah, for Karnak.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really sad.
Yeah. It's just that one moment, isn't it? He's just can't even look her in the eyes, and
testament to Christopher Lee again.
Yeah, fantastic performance again. Yeah, and he just leaves.
Yeah. He knows it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not an anchor, but, reincarnation and things like that. But it's almost like in that moment he's been caught out and he just doesn't want to be that person.
He doesn't want to be the monster.
No.
Cushing obviously survives. The inspector returns aftermath of the attack again.
Yep.
And he actually turns around to Cushing at this point and he's like...
I've been asking questions all day, trying to get some sort of lead. And what I've come up with helps to confirm what you're saying.
I'm glad you're convinced.
I didn't say that, but it is a theory.
There might be some truth to this.
If you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
Yeah. Never heard that before.
You've never heard that?
I've got to be honest, I'm not a Star Trek fan. I've watched the films, but...
Yeah, same.
Every episode ever created Mike has on DVD, folks, I think.
Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
So following on from the attack then, we go back to Bay. Christopher Lee's mummy's returned to him.
Yeah.
He believes that he's killed Peter Cushing's character.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, well done, X, Y, and Z. Kind of he doesn't say X, Y, and Z, and just kind of summarizes. But there's this wonderful shot in this scene. I don't know how they did it. Trick photography, obviously. But
False perception.
Yeah, the same stuff they used for Lord of the Rings with Gandalf and hobbits and stuff, isn't it?
I actually looked at that shot because when it came up, I was like, bloody hell.
Yeah, you can see.
Wow.
You can see why the drunk guy was saying 10 foot now.
But then it lingered on that shot for long enough, and when I got closer to the street, you can see Christopher Lee standing closer to the camera.
Yeah.
And Bay, although it looks like he's looking directly at Kharis,
yeah,
he's talking to Karnak, the
yeah,
statue as well. So it could be like a misperception that they're not actually standing next to each other talking back and forth.
It looked
but
fantastic,
it looks
man.
like they are.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But yeah, it obviously makes Lee's mummy look like a commanding presence on screen, essentially. But again, he's kind of immediately following on from that. He's kind of demoted back to the
slave.
Yeah, and like within a matter of like seconds, and then forced back into his tomb again.
Yeah.
Very much like the scene in Curse of Frankenstein, where he brings him back to life and he's like telling him to sit and stuff like that. As we said in the previous podcast, like he was treating him like a pet dog, basically.
Yeah, cause Bay's talking about now the task is done.
Yeah.
We're going home.
Yeah.
Yeah, granted, he is a, 4,000, 2,000-year-old mummy.
Yeah.
He's not going to get much choice in the modern world, of 1895, but...
He can't suck people dry and regenerate to look normal again.
Yeah.
Like Imhotep can.
Yeah.
Poor guy's kind of stuck as a crusty, dusty mummy. Mummy?
Crusty, dusty money!
And then following on from that, we get this fantastic pinnacle scene now where Cushing and Bay meet.
Yeah, for the first time.
Yeah, and it's very much... It reminded me of, like, Holmes and Moriarty, Blofeld and Bond.
Yeah.
Like, it had that sort of feel to it.
Yeah.
Like, they both know exactly what's fucking going on.
Yeah.
But they're not saying... They're not giving them...
Yeah,
they're not telling them everything, basically.
It's like they're playing a verbal game of chess.
Yeah.
You're not Banning, the archaeologist.
John Banning, junior member.
Of course, you're Stephen Banning's son.
You knew my father?
Only by reputation. I haven't heard about him lately. Has he retired?
My father is dead.
It just, the whole scene is just really, really tense.
And it's really well done. Props to Sangster to try and write a cultural divide between two characters. Of course, Sangster's going to know a hell of a lot more of British culture and Englishness than he is, say, Egyptian culture and being of that ilk.
Yeah.
But the mentioning of Steve dying, Bay is very much like, oh.
Yeah, it kind of brushes it. It goes on to that wonderful moment then where he's like...
You're an intruder. You force your way in. You remove the remains of the long-dead kings and send them to places like the British Museum, where thousands of people can stare at them.
And I was like, fuck, he ain't messing around anymore.
No, but I didn't feel like Bay was in the wrong for the things that he was saying.
No, like 100%.
Very much justified.
Yeah.
And I felt it didn't justify his actions, bringing Kharis here to revenge.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is very much what we see probably in modern day, where we do look back on atrocities and the theft of historical items or cultural items from other places around the world, and it's now in the British Museum.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, I'm pretty sure we still have a lot of Egyptians artifacts in the British Museum today.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
And then this argument is being had in 1959, and it's almost like you have justification to be angry.
Yeah.
But
no,
then
100%.
does John, because of your actions.
But this leads on to another wonderful moment. Cushing fires back, basically, and says, well, your country's got a history of violence.
Yeah.
Which is like, it was kind of like, fuck man, you're trying to justify what you're doing here.
Yeah.
So... Like, are you the real villain here, or...?
But are they not both massive hypocrites?
Oh, 100%.
Because Cushing firing back and saying your country has a history of violence.
So you did it in the past, so we can do it now, basically.
And it's like, a lot of that violence, the British Empire was also part of it. But at least with Egypt, it kept it in one place.
Yeah.
Except for wars. But the Empire stretched.
Yeah. You can see it's kind of getting to him when Cushing fires back at Bay.
Saying Karnak is a fool's god or a lesser.
Like, this guy is becoming scary red hat man.
Yeah.
He's getting, like, really pissed off.
But believe me, to those who worship and serve Karnak, he is all-powerful.
Surely there can't be people who still have such beliefs.
Now you talk about something of which you know nothing. You've scratched only the surface, and you know nothing.
I shouldn't have done it, but it made me laugh when he's like, you know nothing. It just reminded me of that line from...
Snow.
No, it just reminded me of 40 Towers.
I know nothing.
I think of the three films...
So far.
This is
probably the weakest.
It is.
But it's still...
that scene alone I have to give the film props.
Oh god, yeah. Like there's some fantastic moments in it.
Yeah, but just for the dialogue, for the performance of the two characters to have, it almost felt like two titans waging war against each other, just using words.
Well, that speech at the end of this scene about the desecration, like, it's an incredibly powerful speech, an incredibly powerful scene.
I completely agree. I have to hat tip, as much as I didn't enjoy it as much as the other two.
Yeah.
For this scene alone and the practical effects, it's well worth giving it.
Oh, 100%. But as I said, you can see it's got to him at this point. There's a fantastic build-up and it's leading to climax.
Yeah, he's going to blow up.
Yeah, you know exactly what's going to happen. So Cushion leaves then, stops to examine like antiques, and he realises what he's picked up. Basically confirms his suspicions, shall we say.
It's the Tomb of Ananka's seal.
Yeah, the seal's on there. And yeah, this is it, basically. And Bay wastes no time going and waking Kharis back up. Yeah. Cushion basically walks out the door and he goes straight back upstairs. Scolds him to fuck. Because he's like, why the hell have you not killed him?
Yeah.
He basically says then to the statue he's praying to, doesn't he? Like,
Kanak, great god, your servants have failed you. The task is not yet accomplished. But this will be remedied. Before the sun strokes the horizon, the last desecrator will be dead. This I promise. I have served you faithfully, great God, to the best of my humble ability.
So yeah, it's all coming to a head, prepping for the final showdown, so to speak. But this is where we get back to the inspector. As you said earlier, he's given him resources and extra guys at this point. He's even got the villagers involved, and he's saying they're waiting on more of them to come down. So they've got people stationed round outside the house, as you were saying earlier, waiting for Kharis, the mummy, to show up, or potentially Bay.
Yeah.
But this is what threw me about this scene. I wasn't expecting Bay to go with him. I was to a sense, but I wasn't expecting him to be the one, like, knocking people out and killing people.
Stabbing people,
like, I wasn't expecting that at all. I knew he was going to assist the mummy, but I thought the mummy was going to be the one doing the killing.
Yeah, almost like he's going to stand behind him and point where, where to go and who to kill.
It kind of comes down to that old thing. If you want something done right, do it yourself. The inspector stupidly separates from Isabel.
Yeah, he decides that it's safer to have Isabel come with him into the woods.
And then abandons.
Yeah, and then leaves her behind.
I'll be right back. And we all know you don't say stuff like that in a horror film, because you're not going to be right back.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
So then we cut to Cushion. He's waiting inside. He's ready, expecting him to come in. Bay gets one over on the inspector and knocks him out as well.
Yep.
And leads Kharis just normally inside, no busting through doors or shit in this one, just calmly enters because he knows he's screwed, basically.
Yeah.
Attacks Cushion, immediately a fight ensues. Scary red hat man just watching on. Bay's living life at that point.
Yeah.
But then, Isabel comes back in.
Yeah.
Obviously, Bay doesn't know at this point that, he's besotted with her.
Yeah.
But he doesn't recognise her.
I really like this.
Yeah, I thought it was a fantastic moment.
Because they mentioned when you have your hair down like that, you look awfully like her.
Isabel, your hair!
He stops then, doesn't he?
Yeah, stops and starts going towards her.
Yeah.
But then Bay...
Bay turns around and he's like, killer, you're not going to do that, are you? Like, he's definitely not going to do that. And just completely 180s and goes straight after Bay.
Yeah.
And it's just a fantastic moment.
Kill her!
And the BBFC had a couple of suggestions to how Bay should be killed. In reference to page 101 to 103, they have 3 separate suggestions. The first being, here again, the mummy's appearance should not be too gruesome.
Yeah.
As before, throttling should be reasonably short, and lastly, we would not like shots of the mummy break-in Mehemet, which is Bay's character's arm,
Yeah.
and back, nor would we like cracks and crunches in the soundtrack.
Fair point.
Which, when I was watching it, I was expecting a noise.
Yeah.
And there was nothing.
There was no messing around. He just cracked him in two.
Yeah, I liked how he got him in a reverse headlock and then pulled his arm out for an armbar and then just went snap.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
But again, it's a fantastic moment. It again demonstrates the brute strength that this mummy actually has and why, he is a monster and why he should be taken as seriously as Cushing and the others are making him out to be.
Yeah, definitely.
Not to be messed around with.
They actually mention as well, in reference to page 104,
Yeah.
which again, it's still part of the struggle with the monster. As a minor but not unimportant point, we would prefer a blow on the head instead of, quoted from the script, a wicked blow on the side of the neck, since these neck blows, imitable, so people can imitate them, and dangerously effective.
But anyone can imitate anything they see on screen.
And I was thinking, you're advocating for a blow to the head instead of a blow to the neck anyway.
Don't hit him on the neck, just punch him in the face instead.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a bit of an odd request. I suppose at least each one of those, they've been consistent of, you can't show somebody being choked, throttled, as they put it, for too long.
Nothing extensive.
I mean, you do still get quite a lot of it.
Bay's attack is probably the most brutal one.
Oh, 100%.
It's just the angling of his body and everything that he gets him into and the shapes that he makes with
him. Bends him up like a pretzel.
I think we're making it sound worse.
I know, it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things. We've seen a lot worse, but, again, context.
Yeah.
This is 1959. There's not people being sawn in half and God knows what else on screen yet. That's light years away. So, yeah, this would have been quite shocking for the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Apparently, though, this is just all too much for Isabel, because she just faints.
I think I blinked at this point, because I wasn't sure how the mummy got her.
He just goes over.
She was very quiet and she's unconscious.
Just picks her up and iconic monster carry just goes straight out with her. Yeah. It is, let's be honest, most monster films, you will get at least one scene with the monster carrying some sort of woman or damsel in distress.
Yep. Coming from the whole German expressionist films of the 1920s, the monster carrying them in his arms, up a building or through a marsh.
Yeah. Well, I do have this wonderful coffee table book called The Big Book of, I think it's called The Big Book of Monsters, by John Landis.
I have that too.
Yeah, it's fantastic, man. And there's an entire double spread page, and it's just monster carries, iconic monster carries.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see.
It's brilliant.
Because, it's a running theme in, every monster movie. Yeah. Going all the way back to, the early days. Even Frankenstein, the 31 film, had a monster carry.
Yep.
So, it's just become a running theme throughout. And, it's a theme I'm very glad is stuck.
Yeah,
Because there's certain tropes you come to expect with, I'd say, monster films and creature features. Certainly.
Definitely evolved, though.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Definitely evolved from the, 1920s to present day of how they're carried. I mean, you look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre of how he carries.
Fireman's lift, essentially, yeah.
Or just drag across the floor with meat hook.
Yeah, that's... Oh, wow. There's countless examples.
Oh, yeah.
So, we get Lee going off with the iconic monster carry.
Yep.
And they think he's going back to his tomb where Bay was living.
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
Wait! Look! He's taking her to the swamp!
He's got the scroll of life and, he can bring her back to life.
Yeah, he can bring an anchor back.
So the villagers, the inspector, and John, Peter Cushing's character, are all chasing him down. They're closing in. And then he goes into the swamp just willy-nilly. Let's hope he didn't fuck up his legs again.
On the way in.
On the way in. This is the point, as I did say earlier, that, this is the point he did throw his back out.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to feel for the poor guy. He literally, as you said earlier, has suffered for his art.
And rightfully so.
They always say the artist is the tortured one, don't they?
He's the Van Gogh of the film.
But with both ears.
Yeah.
And both eyes this time, because they didn't blind him in this film.
Still think it's unfortunate. They should have.
What did he say? It can't be a running theme for a Hammer horror film, like that they just blind one of your principal cast members. One of your leading, not even just one of your principal cast, one of your leading cast members.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully Lee didn't hurt himself going into the swamp this
hopefully
time. Hopefully he managed to avoid all the piping and everything underneath.
Yeah.
They're all closing in on him at this point. It's all coming to a head, coming to a close.
Isabel, tell him to put you down. Tell him, Isabel, quickly.
Kharis? Kharis, put me down.
Let's get round the other side. Tell the men to be ready.
Slowly coming towards Peter Cushing while they're lining all the villagers up on the side with guns, and Kharis is screwed at this point.
Oh yeah.
Still got the scroll as well.
Yep.
Cushing just goes,
now, Isabel!
and all hell fucking breaks loose on Christopher Lee, the poor guy. Kharis just gets blown to smithereens, basically.
It made me think of two separate scenes from two different films. One of them is...
It's gotta be Bonnie and Clyde.
No, surprisingly, I didn't think of Bonnie and Clyde.
Really? It was very reminiscent, I thought, of Bonnie and Clyde. You think about it, they basically lured him in the car.
And then they just open fire.
Yeah, with this, he was not lured into the swamp, but lured to putting his hostage down.
Yeah.
Drawing her away, and then they just blew him away.
Yeah.
What were the two scenes then? Go on.
It's either Ghost or House of Frankenstein.
Okay.
Where Boris Karloff plays the doctor in this one rather than the monster.
Yeah.
And the monster is carrying him away to safety, away from all the villagers that have now stormed the castle. But Boris Karloff is turning to him and saying, "Not this way! Quicksand! Quicksand this way! Not this way!" And then they walk into quicksand together.
Yeah.
And then drown.
Don't go this way! Quicksand! Quicksand! Not this way!
And the other one was the firing squad in one of the Friday the 13th films.
I mean, the opening scene in Jason Goes to Hell, they do completely obliterate him.
It must be that one.
Yeah.
Then. Yeah, where they're all there and they have like a rocket launcher.
Yeah, they basically blow him to smithereens. And apparently there was a comic book that bridged the gap between Jason Takes Manhattan and Jason Goes to Hell that explained the backstory of why this fucking army team have been on him. Right. But yeah, apart from that, you get no explanation at the start of the film. Just chasing after this bird, and next thing you know, he gets blown up with a rocket launcher. Yeah, yeah, I can see that, to be fair. I can see the comparison. Yeah. There's countless scenes you can compare it to, to be fair. This is quite a brutal scene, so I'd imagine, Mike, that you're going to jump in here with something to do with the BBFC because you're sat there smirking.
Yeah. In both the 5th of February and then the 23rd of February, so even after they revised the script, they had suggestions for this scene. So the last one of the 5th of February document, they have the suggestion for pages 105 to 106. The final shots of the mummy after both barrels are let off at close range into its face should not be gruesome or revolting. Sangster's vivid description makes us feel that they might be, e.g., and this is quote in the script, almost non-existent face, and practically nothing left, great holes having been torn in the bandages, and in what passes for flesh underneath.
I mean, yeah, that sounds quite brutal.
Yeah.
Like, having most of his face blown off sounds quite bad.
Yeah. And then in the revised script, so in the 23rd of February document, they specify in scenes 244 to 267, it is difficult to state whether this, from the angle of censorship, is a good exchange from the first script or not.
Yeah.
Like, they're just going, don't know which was worse.
Yeah.
It sounds rather unpleasant, particularly where great chunks of Kharis fly off in all directions.
That's great.
Where he is writhing about in blind agony. If the scene was shot as scripted, we would be unlikely to pass it.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of see why. That sounds very, very brutal and quite explicit.
Yeah.
In comparison to what we got. I know they must have toned it down, but...
And to be fair to the BBFC, in that 23rd of February letter that they sent back, they do mention, you seem to have made a few alteration as a result of my letter on the 5th of February. But some of the points that I made have not received attention, including sounds of bone snapping. As I told you, I'm quite prepared to offer my advice over the professional and burial scenes when you reach the stage of production. I return your revised script herewith.
Fair play. That was quite an interesting sprinkling of information throughout the episode.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, hopefully you stuck with us till the end. This is the end.
Yeah, it's pretty much the credits roll.
Like, Kharis goes into the swamp. There's this wonderful moment. Again, the 99 Mummy echoes this massively at the end when he's going into the pit or pool or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
And he just says death is only the beginning.
Yeah.
This obviously came a lot sooner before the 99 Mummy did.
Yeah.
But there's that wonderful moment he gets shot, he stumbles round, like half his face missing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just collapses, and then the final shot of him is just his hand clutching the scroll, just going into the swamp.
Yeah.
And that's it, and literally the credits just start rolling over an image of the swamp.
Yeah. It's a very abrupt end.
I found it with the last two films as well. I think it's just a running thing. They just put a lot into everything else, and then the ending just finishes quite abruptly, and they need to wrap it up quickly.
I can understand not having an epilogue.
Oh, they would draw it out way too long, but
you know, have a moment of reprieve.
Yeah.
You know, at the end.
Or the inspector going, well, shit, I should have believed you.
Yeah. You know, something. Anything.
Or
But
just the
instead it's
last...
like, boom, done.
At the last shot of just being... They're all looking over the swamp, and then the drunk guy just comes in and goes, see, I told you so.
Yeah, it was tempting.
Mike, final thoughts on the film?
I have to admit, I didn't enjoy it as much as the
previous
from the first two episodes. Yeah. It's not one of my favourite Hammer films, but then The Mummy in general is not one of my favourite monsters.
Yeah, you did say
characters.
that at the start of the episode, to be fair.
So I think, obviously, this film wasn't made for me. I wasn't born.
I was going to say, like...
would have been strange if it was made for me.
Yeah.
There are scenes that are great, there are moments that are fantastic, but it did nothing new.
No.
It didn't really change much, and I think because it was a direct remake of some of the Universal films, not the original 32, but some of the sequels, didn't feel like its own property.
Yeah, I get you.
What about you? What do you think?
Pretty much agree with that. It's, you know, not my favourite Hammer film, but it's still, I'd say, is worth watching. You can't, you know, deny its imprint, you know, its influence on future films and stuff that's come after it. So I'd say it's worth watching, definitely.
It's definitely worth watching, especially the things that they did push forward.
Yeah.
So the practical effects and what you could do to a monster.
Yeah.
Like we said about the squibs and the gunshots and blowing him up at the end and the stabbing with a spear.
Yeah, 100%.
You get that in films afterwards because of films like this.
I wouldn't call it a benchmark film.
No.
But in the grand scheme of things in Hammer's history, I'd say this is probably, like, up there. As, like, one of their more well-known titles, shall we say. Because there was a couple of sequels that followed on from this as well.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, we'll not talk about them now. They'll be for future episodes, of course, because we are planning on going through the entire back catalogue of Hammer.
Yep.
This wraps up for another episode, folks. Pun intended. Had to get that one in there.
Nice.
Nice. So yeah, head over to the website for more, hook-on-horror.com. Head over to the socials, Facebook, Twitter, well, X is called now, sorry. YouTube, we'll start getting more stuff on there hopefully soon. Yeah, until next episode, thank you for listening.
Cheers.